to be February, anyways. In any case, I thank everybody who is here, who came with us, and we have one more speaker. We're a little bit ahead of schedule. We want to remind you that we do have the dinner. Of course, we have a lot of people who didn't make it because of the snow. So if you know somebody who's really hungry and wants a top sirloin or some chicken for dinner, we're going to have a few extras. Again, we started this journey with Rock from the Heart after Pete's surgery because we did see so much conflicting information out there. So to be able to have professionals like yourself come in and share information with our audience, it really is our goal to get good information. We don't have the answers. We're not the doctors. We don't want to answer the questions for these people, but we want to be a portal to help them find the answers that we need. Through these efforts, we often have people that fall into our laps, and that is how we found Jennifer, who emails me out of the blue, who heard about me from somebody else, who says, "Oh my gosh, what are you doing here? This sounds like a cool thing. Could we be a part of it?" Well, it turns out there's a connection because was it Mike's, Amy's sister that you're best friends with? But it's amazing that the connections that we make through our health and through music. So she's got a really unique presentation she's going to do on how music heals. If Pete was here, he'll tell you that when he went in for his bonus surgery to get his pacemaker, he'll always remember that Elton John was playing over the speakers, "Don't Go Breaking My Heart," before he goes, "I don't know if that was on purpose or if it was just to make me laugh, but I'm going to always remember that," and it kind of calmed me down, got me off the ledge. But so Jennifer found us through our online efforts, through networking that we've done, and offered to come here and be our MC at the last minute when we had a cancellation, and also take this last speaking spot, which I'm very excited about. Jennifer was raised in Cloquet, Minnesota. She currently lives in Spring Park, Minnesota. She received a Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Minnesota Duluth, go Bulldogs, and an MBA from the University of St. Thomas. Through a medical scare in 2016, she learned that things such as music, gratitude, laughter, pets, and acts of kindness can actually lower stress hormones and influence the feel-good chemicals of the brain for patients, survivors, and caregivers. Her message of hope and emotional grit have been heard at places such as the Mayo Clinic, Health Partners Neuroscience Center, and the University of Minnesota. They can also be found in her book titled Greater Than, The Power and Strength of Emotional Grit. So with no further ado, Jennifer Fernjack.
All right, I apologize for the delay here. Just one moment as I backtrack. There we go. Okay, so this time I'm actually the speaker as opposed to the one introducing everybody. But as Amy mentioned, I do have a medical story of my own to share, which I'll get into in a few minutes. But in the interim, I also wanted to share just different ways that music can affect people positively. I know a lot of people assume that, oh, music is nice because there's the entertainment value, which is true, a lot to be said for that. But music can also affect people physically, mentally, just emotionally. Your cognitive abilities can all be affected by music. And I'll illustrate that in the stories that I share today. There are different ways that music can affect people, and part of that is that it can actually lower stress hormones. There are studies that show that music can actually lower the stress hormone cortisol. It can also increase the feel-good chemicals of the brain, such as dopamine or serotonin. Now, the key thing about music, though, is that one person's good music is somebody else's noise. So it's very subjective. And there's a term that psychologists and psychiatrists use that's called salient stimulus. And basically what that means is that if something has meaning for you, or if it's actually relevant to you, it's going to have a greater effect. And that's why if you hear songs that, like from Night Ranger, for example, we had the actual concert, or the group we're going to watch tomorrow night. If the music reminds you of stories from high school, cruising around town in your brand new car, or maybe your first kiss, or partying in college, they're going to actually resonate with you more and have a greater effect on you physically. So it's pretty amazing how it works. And I say all these things knowing that it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, how old you are. Again, it can actually help you. So with little kids, for example, there are studies in hospitals of premature babies, just infants in general, where lullabies could actually lower their heart rates, reduce any kind of feelings of anxiety, and actually help them feel more calm, especially in an environment where there's lots of bright lights and loud noises and machines beeping and people poking them with needles. Music can also help them with their perception of pain. So it's pretty amazing how that works just for little kids. Also, for adults, there are amazing stories and corresponding studies as well. I know that people with Parkinson's disease oftentimes have a hard time walking. But again, there are studies that show if they dance to music that's relevant to them, that has the ability to increase their dopamine levels, which gives them a smoother gait as they're dancing. And that's why you can hear about people or read about them online who have a hard time walking but an easier time dancing when they hear that kind of music that has meaning for them. The same thing can be said for people who have dementia. I know years ago my mom worked in a memory care unit up in Duluth, Minnesota, which is up by Lake Superior. And at the time, people didn't have smartphones yet with MP3 files on them. Instead, it was more apt for people to have a tape deck or a CD player or even a record player for that matter to play music for people. And as she worked in the memory care unit, she noticed there were a lot of people who had Alzheimer's disease or some other form of dementia where they didn't want to take their medications. They seemed very agitated, very kind of almost irritated and withdrawn, and kind of like, don't talk to me, and not wanting to communicate with people. But for her as the nurse, she had to get them to take their prescribed medications. So without missing a beat, my mom would get out a tape player and put a tape in there of either very soothing music or music that actually could resonate with those people. Maybe it was big band era music, or perhaps a little bit of Frank Sinatra or something to that effect. Well, these people then who had the dementia all of a sudden seemed more relaxed. They wanted to actually communicate and connect with her and were more apt to take their medicine. So it can affect you physically, definitely, and especially, as I mentioned, when it's relevant to you. There was also a study that I want to call out that was done in England a number of years ago, where music was known to actually affect people at a subconscious level. Because again, it can influence your cognitive abilities. There was a supermarket where people wanted to sell wine, and they had bottles of French wine and bottles of German wine. And the wine was common as far as the price, whether the dryness, the sweetness of the wine, those things were pretty comparable. However, every other day they would either play French music or German music. And they noticed that as they were playing, for example, more French music, more French wine would sell. Or if they played more German music, they would actually sell more German wine. And when the people were asked later who actually bought the wine, so do you recall the music that was playing or how that made you feel? People didn't even pay attention to the fact that, oh yeah, I guess I did pick more German, wine when there was German music playing or vice versa. So it's interesting how music can also affect you from a cognitive perspective, whether it's conscious or subconscious. Also, there are grocery stores who have been known to have different kinds of music playing while you're shopping. That's a certain kind of music. More often than not, it's a very soothing kind of music. So as you're pushing your shopping cart, you're more apt to do it slowly and then pay attention to the actual things on the shelves. And that's because, again, that music can have that effect on you. Whereas if the grocery stores played more of a fast tempo music, you're going to be more apt to just push your cart and go through and kind of miss half the things that are on display. So pretty amazing stuff. This next slide, I have some pictures of how I've noticed that music is basically hidden in plain sight in public places because people know at a community level how it can affect you physically. I know on the left side here, I have a piano that I took a picture of at Abbott Northwestern Hospital in Minneapolis. They would have volunteers playing it, and once in a while, either caregivers or patients or survivors would play the pianos too. Also, on the right side of my screen, where it reads pianist wanted, that's a sign from the Minneapolis airport where they have a baby grand piano down by the luggage claim area. And I've seen pianos like that with signs encouraging people to play them at the New Orleans airport, Detroit, Charleston. I mean, you name it, I've seen them around the country. And so it's pretty cool how, again, they're hidden in plain sight. How many of you have ever shopped at Menards? So kind of a random question right now, whether it was for PVC pipe or 2x4s or nails. Well, I know that there's actually a Menards just outside Minneapolis where when you go up the escalator, maybe you're going to go buy some light fixtures or what have you, there's a baby grand piano there and someone's there playing music for people as they're shopping. So again, there are these different values that can help people, whether you realize it or not, even if it's just entertaining while you're shopping for 2x4s. So you might be wondering, well, how could this help me possibly? I mean, these stories are great, but how could they possibly help me? Well, I can tell you firsthand that they can help you, whether you're a patient, a survivor, or a caregiver. And the reason why I say that is because this picture here is of me. This was in 2016 as I was having an MRI with an IV of contrast in my arm. And the reason why that happened is because in the spring of that year, I went in to visit my eye doctor, as I do every year to get my contact prescription renewed. And at the time of the exam, my eye doctor said, "You know, Jennifer, for the second year in a row, you didn't do as well on your peripheral vision exam. I want you to see a specialist." Okay, I wasn't worried about it. I couldn't feel any symptoms of anything that could have been wrong. So I went to the specialist. He in turn ran more tests and then took pictures of the backs of my eyes. He then said, "You know, Jennifer, I think something might be pushing on your optic nerve. I'd like you to have an MRI." So I did just that the Friday of Memorial Day weekend. And the very next day, I got a phone call that I never saw coming. It was the eye specialist with the results of the MRI. And he said, "Jennifer, I'm afraid I have some bad news for you. It appears as though you have a brain tumor." Initially, I was in denial because like I said, I couldn't feel any symptoms of anything. No headaches, no motor skill problems, no speech impediments, nothing, no cognitive inabilities. It was almost like we were talking about a third party. So I got out a pad of paper and a pen, asked lots of questions, took copious notes. But then literally within seconds of getting off the phone, I dropped to my knees and sobbed. My mind went from 0 to 60 in just a few seconds as I thought, am I going to go blind? Am I never going to get married again? Am I going to die? And after laying on my bedroom floor by myself for about 10 minutes, having this overall visceral response where I'm just, like, had I been talking, I would have been stuttering just because it was just this overwhelming feeling. And after laying there crying there for a while, I thought, you know what, I can't let this consume me. Actually, I won't let it consume me. So I got out my pad of paper and pen again, and I made a list of reasons why it's positive to have a brain tumor. And that might sound kind of counterintuitive, but it started with, maybe I'll lose some weight. And then I wrote, maybe I'll meet a hot single doctor. And then I went on to write such things as, good reminder to count blessings, good excuse to reach out to people I haven't seen in a while. And then my list got a little bit more somber as I wrote, good excuse to eat dessert first. And I later learned that gratitude, just like music, can actually influence those feel-good chemicals of the brain and actually reduce the stress hormone cortisol. So I wasn't in denial of my circumstance, quite the contrary. But by making that list of reasons why it's positive to have a brain tumor, it actually gave me like more of a perceived sense of control, and that's exactly what I needed. And between the anticipation of my surgery, the surgery itself, the healing from surgery, and the corresponding radiation treatments, there were other things that helped as well. I should call out the fact that my tumor is called the meningioma. It's something that's actually, it forms in the outer lining of the brain, which is called the meninges. And my tumor was the size of a golf ball. And it was kind of wedged between my optic nerve, my carotid artery, my pituitary gland, and the outside of my brain. So not really the best spot per se. And my surgeon was thankfully able to remove half the tumor. And I'm very grateful that he had the wisdom to leave the other half behind, because it's still to this day partially encasing my carotid artery. And so even though it wasn't cancerous, the hope was that the actual radiation sessions would kill the cells. And so I'm very grateful to say that after the last 5 years, it's been just over 5 years now since the surgery, there's been no evidence of any kind of regrowth with the remaining cells in my head, so I'm happy about that. But it was interesting how throughout this whole process, there were things in everyday life that helped me where I never expected it. I mean, I never would have guessed that music, for example, or gratitude, as I mentioned, could have a physical effect on me, but it did. I know that the night before my surgery, I had asked my mom, my dad, and my dad's wife to sit at my dining room table so I could actually review my healthcare directive with them and my burial wishes. I mean, I had been told that I might go blind during the surgery, or I might not come out, or I could have had a blood clot or a stroke. I mean, there was a whole litany of things that could go wrong. And so out of respect for them, I wanted to go through these legal documents ahead of time. And even though I knew logically that I should do this, emotionally it weighed heavily on me. And so when we were done, I chose to take a shower. And I thought, okay, I'm going to take a shower and kind of reclaim this moment and have just kind of some solace and kind of regain my footing, so to speak. And before I took a shower, I got out my smartphone and I made a list of music on there that's relevant to me. So as I mentioned earlier, it's that salient stimulus. It's songs that give you feelings of nostalgia and kind of make you feel good. And so the reason why I had the presence of mind to do this is because I noticed for years at stadium events, like say maybe you're at a professional hockey game or a football game or something, sometimes all it takes is a little bit of We Will Rock You by Queen to have thousands of people on their feet and clapping their hands and chanting. Well, that's music. As it's lowering your stress hormones and increasing that dopamine level in your mind can give you that great feeling. I also noticed over the years that people who are at health clubs, oftentimes, whether it's on a treadmill or lifting weights or maybe on a Nautilus machine, more often than not, they're wearing earbuds. And that's because their choice of music can motivate them. So I thought, okay, why not me the night before surgery? So my list of music on my smartphone was it was like old school hip hop, or it was what I call hair bands, like your Night Ranger kind of bands. So I had a little bit of like Def Leppard on there as well, and a little bit of Bon Jovi and what have you. But all music that I liked. And I took the same approach when I had my radiation treatments. I know when my first time in the radiation room, I noticed that there was the machine itself and a table that I had to lay on, and there was a whole wall full of masks. And the masks were all customized to fit those of us who had to have radiation treatments. The way the mask could be placed on your face and then fastened around your head, the way you couldn't move at all during the radiation treatments as it came into your head. And I had a Velcro strap put around my arms as well, so they couldn't flail off the table. And my first day in that room, it was kind of intimidating because I thought, oh, when that radiation comes in, it won't just hit my tumor, it's going to hit whatever's in its way, whether that's my pituitary gland, my optic nerve, I mean, all that kind of stuff, my carotid artery. So I thought, okay, Jen, you can't not experience this, figure out the how. And that was when I asked people at the hospital if I could bring my smartphone in and listen to that same list of music. And they were nice enough about it in that the hospital already had a docking station with speakers, so that was good. They had that ahead of time. But they also had a CD player in there with some CDs they were going to play for me. And I thought it was a very nice gesture. I mean, the songs were all like the type of music I liked. And type was a nice gesture, but the actual songs that had relevancy to me are what I needed. So one day in particular, as I had my smartphone in their docking station with the speakers going, the song of the day was Rapper's Delight by the Sugar Hill Gang, which is from like the late 70s, early 80s. And the music starts out kind of disco-y, and then the guys start rapping over it. Well, the radiation tech's job, if you will, was to get me on the table, get my radiation mask on me, fastened around my head, get that Velcro strap around my arms, and then go turn on the music before going into the observation room. And once he was in the observation room, he would then use the microphone to give me directions if he wanted to, and look at me through a window. And then there was a whole wall full of computers, and then turn on the radiation. Well, before he turned on the radiation, over the music and over the microphone, he says to me, "And today we have a little radiation for the ladies." The music, the act of kindness, the laughter, didn't just benefit me as the patient, they also benefited him as the caregiver. I mean, I have an immense amount of respect for people who work at hospitals where, especially with these radiation techs, where every day it's patient after patient who's coming in, having the radiation sessions done, and nobody wants to be there. I mean, it's intimidating. It's not your sense of normalcy. It's even though logically you know that you should be there, you probably don't want to be there. And so I thought, what a great way to benefit him as the caregiver as well by being able to unite through music. So it's a pretty amazing thing. But I also wanted to take time today to ask any of you for your stories. I mean, I'm curious even about the surgeons that are here. Like when you're doing surgery, what kind of music do you like? Like what kind of things do you do from a music perspective that motivates you? Or anybody else who's here as well. Is there any kind of a music story that you have, whether it's going through radiation treatments, or I'm anticipating going to the hospital and having a surgery done on your heart where music possibly played a role in your story. So does anybody have a story that they could share for us tonight? You've got them. They're out there.
You know you got him, but I know when we talk about this, when Pete was diagnosed, he had 2 years of what we called watch and wait, and 2 years of hell, 2 years of living your life in 6-month chunks. So what did we do? We tried to go on musical adventures. We recorded music or we played music. One time we drove all the way from Minneapolis to Toledo, Ohio to see our favorite band, Cheap Trick. We tried to do anything we could because we didn't, when your mind can be a terrible thing, and it's really easy to think of the very worst things. So for us, music helped us in that 2 years between diagnosis and surgery to not think about the big scary thing that was lurking in his chest. So, I mean, just powerful music. And the fact that he's a drummer, the funny story that he likes to tell is he didn't know, when can I drum after my surgery? Everywhere online it says when you can golf, when you can hit a bat, when you can go running. I want to see something when I can drum. So he went in the basement actually, and he had me film him drumming. And he brought it to his cardiologist, and he said, okay, Dr. Campbell, when can I do this? And he goes, I think probably light drumming at 6 weeks we'd try. And when it came to the Rock from the Heart story, and one reason that we have Night Ranger as our band for the third time is the summer, Pete was going to have his surgery in July, and it was in March that we heard that Night Ranger's drummer Kelly Kagi had a heart surgery, and he was going to be out for 8 weeks. We're like, oh, wonder what it was. Was it a valve? Was it this? Was it a bypass? We didn't know. And then, of course, me, who's been on the internet, goes, well, if it's 8 weeks, that's probably the recovery from open heart, not a stent or anything else. And then we hear a few months later that Night Ranger is going to be in Fargo at Ribfest in June. So we hopped in the car, we drove to Fargo to see Night Ranger. And it was 8 weeks after Kelly Kagi's open heart surgery. And Pete and I were there. We have a ton of friends in Fargo. We've got some of them in the room here tonight. And there was Kelly Kagi up there behind his drum kit playing a 90-minute set of rock music. He took a break for one in his drum tech. Richie drummed one song for him, but other than that, he was drumming and singing. And Pete looked at me and he said, okay, that's the Kelly Kagi barometer. I'm going to drum in 8 weeks. So once again, there was the music healing. And that was the first moment in 2 years since his diagnosis that I said, okay, we can plan something for 6 months or for after your surgery. So this was in June. Pete's surgery was in July. We planned Pete a gig for 8 weeks after his surgery. So Pete, just like Kelly Kagi, played his first drumming gig, a solid 45-minute set in downtown Delano, and he played his drums. So music got us through. So we're glad that you're here. We're glad to have Rock from the Heart. We're really trying to use this to pull people together through the music, but it really isn't the music. I mean, that's a great thing. But we have people that come to us now after a concert or after an event or just seeing us online that say, you know what? I didn't even think about going to my doctor, but I went because I saw your event and I found out I had this. Or I came to your concert and guess what? I've had this heart surgery procedure. I thought I was alone. So one of my things I say now is, you're only as alone as you think you are in your own mind. Once you get out there, you'll find that there are so many people with shared experiences. I found Mike Sylvester because I was Googling for somebody before Pete's surgery. It's going, I want to see somebody who's alive after this surgery. I'm tired of all the scary stories and these horror stories of people who are no longer with us after having an aortic aneurysm or a valve repair. And there's this Mike Sylvester story, this postman that nearly died, that had an aortic dissection, and here he's out delivering his mail. So I hunted you down, Mike, and I found you on the interwebs. So, and so glad that you're a part of this. But I could go on because the benefits are so great. And without the support of groups like Essentia Health, I'm just thrilled to have you guys with us to help us pull this together. Because even though the room is emptier than we would have hoped tonight because, snow, blizzard winds, 50-mile-an-hour winds, and snow isn't the best combination. But we have these presentations recorded. They will be available online after this event. So we have a YouTube channel for Rock from the Heart. So within the next couple of weeks, once we get everything, we'll have those available, and then we'll share those on our social media. So find us at rockfromtheheart.org. We're on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and anywhere else that pops up. So again, thank you for the opportunity to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to share our story, and thank you for sharing yours with us and being a part of this.